allow me to introduce myself. I'm Bryce Caswell, and I was a 2003 Most Valuable Student Scholar, along with Sean. And that's probably why we look familiar, much older, but familiar.
And I'm Sean Loosli. I was the other Most Valuable Scholar winner in 2003 from Provo, Utah. Lodge 849 was my sponsoring lodge.
I think for me it was a very humbling experience in a great way. So Sean has actually become a lifelong friend. We met that weekend, and I think one of the things that has stuck with me every day, literally, that comes up in my life is the speech he gave when we got to speak at conference. And I think it was incredibly humbling, and I just remember having a lot of gratitude and realizing how fortunate I was to find an organization and a friend who cared so much about giving back to people in the right way that was selfless and kind and human. And I think it taught me a lot, and it made me aspire to be a better person than how I'd been coming into the weekend, and to look at things in a different way. So it was very humbling and just inspirational experience.
Yeah, and I think for me, a lot of it was just about the people that we met. A lot of great people as the delegates from all the different states. Some of the people from headquarters. We went to a lot of different mixers and receptions and activities. And it was really great just to see people and hear their stories and hear the different connections that we had, as well as just meet some of the people that are doing the work that helps to fund the kinds of programs that we've been beneficiaries of, the incredible generosity that goes into it, meeting people that I've stayed in contact with over the years, both from the Utah delegation, as well as Don DePello from California, who was one of the sponsoring past Grand Exalted Rulers for me, and then also people like Bryce, some of the other scholars that I was able to interact with. And then it's just some of the fun times of going to the baseball games, seeing the Cardinals, going to the receptions, having a lot of great food and great stories and meeting great people.
One of the things I think we've both talked about a lot is the cost of tuition in a lot of schools has just gone up so much, and the fact that it basically gave us an opportunity to pay for college and have that be a reality was beyond my wildest dreams. The scholarship still amazes me that it even exists in this amount, in this form. I think it's probably the most generous organization out there. I love it.
Yeah, and I'd absolutely agree with that, and then also say that one of the best parts about it was that it sort of takes into account the full expense of going to school. So tuition is a huge part of it, and the rises in tuition make it much more difficult to be able to afford college, particularly without going into debt. But then in addition to that, you have tuition fees, room and board, health insurance, all these other ancillary costs that also get to add up pretty significantly. And so if you're like us and you're moving far away from home and far away from family and some of those support systems, then the cost goes up even more than what you would see with just the tuition. So having the ability to have a little bit of additional supplementary types of funds to cover some of those costs was a really big help as well. Plead the fifth.
The hot tub story. So the way I will put this is, I think, interestingly enough, I have always described myself as a bit socially awkward, and it wasn't my tendency, at least at 18, to go up to new people I didn't know and meet them. But I'm generally always a cold person, so I went to check out the hotel hot tub, and sitting in the hot tub was another teenage guy, and we'd never met. And I think we both just kind of looked at each other, and fortunately Sean was much better at doing this and kind of said, "Are you the girl?" And I think my response was something very witty, like, "Are you the guy?" And at which point we realized we were, and that's how we actually met. So we met in a hotel hot room in St. Louis, and that will always be our story.
Yeah, and I think it was a little bit of, we had somehow gotten to know that we were each there for the Elks thing, and then understood that we were each recipients of the scholarship. I think that one thing that it shows, though, even though it's a kind of silly, goofy story, is that a lot of the time the opportunities that you find in life and the people who really make a difference in your life do come out of some of these spontaneous interactions. And I think that's one of the really great things about the Elks in general, but also in particular with this program, some of the networking opportunities, some of the other social interactions that you can have to build those relationships, build those friendships, build those networks of people who are really great people and the kind of people that you want to have around in your life, and then being able to maintain those relationships through these types of activities. So here we are again, 12 years later, participating actively in trying to help the next group of scholars that are going through some of the same things, continuing to foster that friendship and hope that they'll be able to continue that with each other, and maybe we'll have some type of a mentoring role or other helping role in their lives as well.
Yeah, and I would add just one thing to that, which is, to Sean's point, that's one of the things that I think what's amazing about creating a leadership weekend in particular, where scholars get to interact. I think sometimes you spend so much of your time focused on kind of these tangible goals, getting a scholarship, finding funding for college, and those are incredibly important things, and I would never want to lessen that experience. But I think to the point of introducing yourself to someone else and networking and who you meet, I would never have guessed that by doing that I would end up with one of my best friends in life that just, even though we're very different, it's something incredible that came out of the weekend. And I think the more opportunity you have in life to be in situations like this where you get to interact with incredibly diverse people with interesting experiences, you should give yourself that opportunity. And even if you don't give yourself the opportunity, the Elks really gives you that opportunity for the weekend, which is incredible. College is just such an interesting thing. I think I couldn't, from my own personal experience, trying to understand winning a scholarship, first of all, getting into Harvard, and then being able to afford to go to Harvard, those things just don't happen to people, and that's how I felt for so much of my life. Getting kind of a fairy tale moment is what I call it, when both of these things happened in quick succession, and I ended up at Harvard, and it was such an eye-opening experience. And I think meeting Sean and realizing we were both going to be at the same place and understanding how the other person was going to approach it, and Sean and I, again, are different, but it was just amazing to go into Harvard knowing you had a friend that you could count on. And the experience itself was just, I'm a little bit speechless to talk about. It was a sensational opportunity that I think opened my eyes to how the world should be and could be, and what possibility there was that I'd never imagined for myself. And I would never have been given that opportunity without winning this scholarship and getting to go, and really my entire life changed.
And I think that my experience in a lot of ways was very similar to what Bryce was saying, where right up until senior year of high school, I had never even considered going to one of these big brand name universities or one of the elite schools. And then it went from, I'll apply just to see what would have happened, to, okay, maybe I'll get in, but there's no way I'm going to be able to pay for it, to having things fall in place largely due to generosity of the Elks and other organizations like the Elks, having an opportunity to go and pursue these opportunities that I never would have had otherwise. And I think also another thing that I would add is that even though we didn't know all of the particulars of each other's story, we definitely knew that there were a lot of similarities there in the types of backgrounds that we were coming from, the type of involvement that we'd had in high school, the type of financial situations that our families were in. And going to one of these places where the reputation is that you have all these New England blue bloods and they've all gone to prep school and they've been sort of groomed for this, or their families have been going for generations, I think there is definitely some of that there, but it was also helpful to have that perspective of having other people like us who are there in that same position, and knowing that, to an extent we belong there as well, and we could still be successful and we could hold our own amongst the people who were more of the traditional candidates or the traditional students that you might encounter at some of those schools.
But to be fair, I think it's also important to highlight that it's great to have that, because the realm of possibility expands. I think, as Sean and I have both said, we never envisioned for ourselves that Harvard was a given, or that we were the type of person that would end up there, or people would perceive our value in that way. And I think you go in with a bit of insecurity, thinking, I must be the admissions mistake because everyone else must be smarter and better. And the thing that was amazing was being around many people that were humble, and just having the opportunity to look at other people and say, wow, I love the way you love to learn. And I never even knew you could learn like that. I never knew you could think like that. I didn't know other people had experienced life like this. And having your horizons expanded and getting the opportunity to do that will change the way you interact with the world. And it really, I think, opens your mind to how else you can help people in a way you didn't think about. So I think even for that reason, that was a huge part of going to college and where the opportunity we got.
In fall of 2003, I entered Harvard and started as a freshman. Had a great chance there to take advantage of some of the opportunities for all students, but also in particular with freshmen, some freshman seminars that were really interesting and cool educational opportunities. Then I actually took 2 years off and went to live in Russia, doing missionary work for my church, and had a lot of really great experiences there as well, meeting with people from a different culture, learning a different language, developing even more a lot of my other leadership and organization skills. And then I came back to Harvard in 2006 and finished out the next 3 years with a degree in Russian studies. After that, I went out to Stanford University and did a master's degree in Russian studies. And while I was there, I got involved in some of the tech initiatives that are there in Silicon Valley. There's a lot of ties between Stanford and the tech community in Silicon Valley. And so I got involved on sort of an extracurricular level with some of those companies and some of those circles and networks, and decided to give this high-tech thing a shot and see what it was all about. So I wound up getting a job as a project manager at a local technology company, and I'm still working there in the technology space doing online banking software. I run some of our innovation programs, doing design thinking workshops and helping us to think about how do we better solve our problems using creative thinking, using design methods, using the ability of bringing everybody to the table to talk about different solutions and strategies instead of just the executives telling us from top down what we should be doing in the company. So I think that if not for any of those steps, then I definitely wouldn't be where I am today, either professionally or financially or otherwise. And so it's been a really great ride. It's been a very full 12 years. Also in the middle, I married my high school girlfriend, Lauren, so we're in the process of starting our family out in California. I'd be remiss if I left that out. And yeah, things have been going pretty well, thanks to a lot of the other opportunities that I've had in the meantime.
So I like to think of my path, kind of my journey since college, as the road less traveled, to use a very old analogy. I think realistically for me, the 4 years was pretty incredible. And I think I went into my 4 years at college thinking I would follow up graduating from college and immediately go into law school. That was my idea, and I thought that was the best way to address injustice and all of these things. And amazingly, I had a very different kind of realization, epiphany while I was at college, and realized shortly, maybe after freshman year, that I suddenly was just happy. For the first time in my life, I was getting exposed to things and knowledge and people who thought like I did, and I wasn't the odd man out. I suddenly had friends and who felt like family, and I was getting support from them that I really never felt before. And I think that made me realize that I wanted to try to find something to do in life where I was happy first, and then I could give more to people around me. And so with that mindset, I decided to move to Ohio following graduation, and I began working for Abercrombie & Fitch doing international real estate, which is just a job I fell into. I got to go to Tokyo, spend a lot of time there over a couple of years. And then I decided to leave to be more entrepreneurial, because that was just something I think innately is in me, a little bit of the go-getter aspect. And I started a jewelry company where it was environmentally friendly jewelry. So I partnered with the Ocean Conservancy to kind of donate at the same time for every pair of earrings I sold, or kind of ideas like that. And it was great, and I loved it. At the same time, to kind of pay my bills, I was working as a product developer at an educational software company, which still exists, and was wonderful because they work a lot with charter schools and alternative education, as well as mainstream high schools and elementary schools. But the idea was, how can you provide education to people from all backgrounds and make it accessible? So I love some of the work that they've done, and it was a great opportunity for me. And between both of those things, it took about 5 years. And I decided, being a liberal arts background, I think I had an incredible foundation, and I learned so much in college, but I finally became ready to go on and try something else. And I think between considering law school and business school seemed to be a good fit. I always thought I was very tenacious and able to do things from the ground up, and I can make things happen, but I didn't know if I was necessarily doing it in the most intelligent way and how to make things bigger and more accessible. And I always wondered if there was an element I was missing in the business world. So I decided to go to Duke and to Fuqua, and honestly, it was because it has a very team-based culture, which was not me at all. I think one of the things is, when you're a type A personality, you're very individualistic, sometimes by nature, not everyone, but I'm great at doing things on my own, and I could always figure out how to make something work. But the beauty about going to Duke was, I think I cried for the first month, because you had to really rely on 6 other people in terms of what your grade was and what your projects looked like, and it gives you a sense of, once you get over that hump and you let go of some of this, I have to be in control and it's all about what I can do, you really understand how a team can make things incredible. And so I got to spend 2 years there working with entrepreneurship and finance and these very quant-heavy subjects I'd never participated in, meeting people. About 40% of our class is international, so from all over the world, and talking about their challenges the countries faced and how they look at business. And it was suddenly like I inherited an international family. And so the one thing I kind of hadn't done over all these avenues was doing something in finance. So I decided to go work for Goldman Sachs and was very fortunate to get the opportunity. And so I'm now living in New York City, living the Wall Street dream, as people like to say, living that every day and working in our investment management division, where I work with a lot of our clients that are high net worth families or foundations and endowments and try to figure out, in my mind, what's the most affordable way or the best way to position money and help giving continue. And my plan is to actually apply for a PhD this fall, hopefully to go to finance. And I want to be able to financial literacy on a mass scale that's not expensive and accessible to everyone.
The financial crisis, is it your fault?
No, the financial crisis was not my fault.
Sean, are you a Russian spy?
No comment.
So I think when I first got the email asking me if I'd be interested in coming and being on the panel, it was the best opportunity I could imagine having to be involved as an alumni. I think it's difficult and challenging to figure out a way you can give back to this organization that really gets you involved with the new scholars. It's easy to find Sean and I and to keep talking and get involved in other ways, but we were asked to come back and be panelists on the judging panel basically for the scholarship. And so we are, hopefully we're not dashing dreams. Hopefully what we're doing is really finding a meaningful way to meet 20 incredible candidates that I think are unbelievably impressive. And I think hopefully impart some knowledge and some wisdom that we've learned, not in a way that there were things, I cannot believe it's been 12 years, but from 12 years ago when we met to think about what my life has been like and all the opportunities both of us have had, we're getting the opportunity to sit there and say, I hear you talking about wanting to do this startup, or I hear you talking about this app. I actually have someone I'd like you to meet that can maybe help you with that. Or I know you mentioned you're concerned about this with college, or you're thinking about grad school. Let's have a visit because there's someone you should probably talk to who could maybe be helpful. So hopefully we can provide mentorship. And that's really what I'm here to do, is meet 20 of the most outstanding people you're going to hear about for the next 40 years in this country, and hopefully be a part of imparting something to them this weekend that they can really walk away with.
I'm just here eating deep dish pizza, going to the comedy clubs, hanging out. So I had actually reached out to the National Foundation headquarters a couple of years ago with some questions about how I might continue to be involved and wanting to be a participant in the overall scholarship program. And so a couple of years ago, I went to the National Convention in Reno because it happened to be pretty close to where I live in Northern California. And I was able to meet up with a lot of the people from headquarters and meet some of the scholars there as well. And then this opportunity came along that they had mentioned. They're thinking about revamping how the scholars are selected. And I thought that it would be another great opportunity to, again, continue that relationship with the Elks and be able to, in some way, give back just a little bit, even though I often feel like as much as we try giving back, we wind up still getting more than we put in.
Yes, exactly.
And so it's been a great opportunity to meet some of these really amazing young people, get really excited and inspired by some of their stories, by the amazing accomplishments they've had, by some of the challenges that they've overcome, by the goals that they have for the future and the things that they have in store for them coming up. So it's been a really great opportunity to meet some of them and just also have some fun with them, have some fun with the people from the National Foundation, and continue to build on some of those relationships that I mentioned earlier.
Yes. I was joking with Sean and said I found someone I think is a mini Sean. Like, he reminded me of Sean 12 years ago, but for myself particularly, I think I see, if I maybe were to take 4 or 5 people and I can pick a quality from each of them or things that they'll say, and it really resonates with me, and I feel like I'm right back there remembering, I know exactly what you're talking about when you say that. And I think there's something very comforting on that, both as sitting on the other side of the table and being the person talking about it, which is when you have someone and they understand where you're coming from, and so it's not something that you're worried about explaining. It's great. And I think there were several times when I've talked to people this weekend where I've just sat there and been like, I understand what you're saying, and I know where you're coming from, and I understand what this experience is like, and you're going to do great. You just need to be confident and be yourself, and they're well on their way. We're not doing anything to other than hopefully being able to provide some encouragement. It's inspirational, I think, more for me than it might be even for them, which I hope is not the case, but it is even talking to other judges and everything else, you start to realize, I think there's something much bigger that this organization does, and you just want everyone to know about it and figure out how can we get this out everywhere so more and more people participate and more people get their ideas heard and affect change.
Yes, I absolutely see a lot of myself in many of these young people. In many ways, I wish that I had been more like them when I was that age, and we were kind of joking around that back when we had gotten the award, we didn't have to do the interview process. We just submitted our applications, and we were kind of teasing each other that if we had to go back through and do it again, we don't know whether we would have been the recipients after all. Yeah. We may not have put up quite so well against some of these other guys, but yeah, it's been a really great chance to see some of them and see some of the great ambition that they have, as well as some of the great accomplishments that they have, and reflect back on some of those same things from back when we were their age.
I would just like to say the amount of gratitude I have, I am aware of all the time. I cannot thank the Elks and the Foundation enough for the efforts you do. I think hopefully you understand at some level the amount of change you are having on people's lives, and really it gave my life a brand new outlook and chance that I would never have otherwise gotten. And I'm aware of it every day. I'm grateful every day. This will be something that goes with me for the rest of my life, and I just want to say thank you for that and kind of the person you're helping me to become.
Yeah, and I would just want to say thank you to all of the people who have participated in any way, whether it's at the national level, whether it's at your local lodge level, whether it's just as a donor, whether it's somebody who's been helping to administer some of these programs. It really does make a huge difference in a lot of people's lives. And in particular with the Elks, I think it's especially meaningful that so many of the people who are contributing their time or some of their means are people who are of middle class or modest economic stature. And so that means it's especially meaningful where you know that there is a sacrifice involved. You know that these people are giving of themselves and giving something that they might miss maybe even a little bit more than some of the other more well-to-do donors from other organizations and things. So I think that it's especially meaningful, and I think that one of the quotes that comes to mind is something that we say within our church. There's a saying that says that by small and simple things are great things brought to pass. And I think that that's really the case here, that you can see a lot of seemingly small and simple contributions that when you add it up over the aggregate really do come out to really amazing results in terms of the time and the money and the effort that is put into it, and then in turn the positive change that can affect in young people's lives, whether it's through the scholarships like us, whether it's through Hoop Shoot, whether it's through some of the community grants or other community activities that are performed at the local level. It really is an amazing amount of positive change, amazing amount of positive work and good being done in the world by members everywhere throughout the country.